Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a very specific mission today.
Yeah, a lot of ground to cover.
Right. Because we are strictly looking at the state of play for early 2026. And to do that properly, I think we need to start by dismantling a mental model that most of us, and I definitely include myself in this, have been carrying around for the last 20 or 30 years. It's this idea that the global economy is defined by flows.
Right. The classic globalization textbook definition.
Exactly. We have this picture in our heads of a perfectly frictionless world. Oil just flows freely across the oceans, capital zips through fiber optic cables in milliseconds, data moves without borders.
Yeah.
The assumption has always been that if there's demand in London, supply just naturally flows from Tokyo or Riyadh to meet it. It's supposed to be a seamless system.
It's supposed to be.
But looking at the stack of sources we have for you today, we've got some heavy reporting from Reuters, a deep earnings analysis from the New York Times, and some really revealing tech coverage from TechCrunch. And honestly, that old model feels, well, it feels naive right now.
It's not just naive. I mean, it's practically dead, or at the very least, it is currently suspended. Because if you look at the hard data we have on the table today, the world doesn't run on flows right now. It runs on choke points.
Choke points.
Choke points. We are moving into an economic era where the defining feature isn't the open ocean, it's the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And what is fascinating and frankly a little alarming for anyone trying to navigate this is that when you stress test these choke points, the standard market signals that we all watch, like price of tickers or supply quotas, they just stop working.
They break down.
Completely.
Yeah.
They don't tell you the truth anymore.
Okay, let's really unpack this for the listener because we have three very different types of choke points to cover in this deep dive.
Right.
We've got a physical one involving the energy market, specifically in the Middle East. We have an industrial one involving the actual machinery of AI, the hardware. And we have a corporate one involving the software layer that basically controls our digital workforce.
And in all three cases, the story is exactly identical. Access is restricted. The rules of the game are changing from how much do you want to buy to can you even get through the gate in the first place?
So let's start with the physical choke point, the energy markets. And honestly, if you were just glancing at the headlines this morning, you might think things are actually looking up.
Sure, on the surface.
I'm looking at a report from Reuters. This is dated March 2nd, 2026. It says explicitly that OPEC Plus has agreed to raise production.
Right, they finally turned the tap a little bit.
According to Reuters, they are putting an extra 206,000 barrels per day onto the market starting in April. Now, that sounds like a relief valve, right?
Yeah.
More supply, lower prices. Standard economics 101.
If we were in a normal market, yes, absolutely. But this is where we have to apply a different lens, what we call the bee sting reframe.
The bee sting reframe.
Right, you have to look at what actually hurts, not just the noise of the swarm. In a choke point economy, that 206,000 barrels per day figure is arguably the least consequential number in the room.
See, that seems totally counterintuitive to me. I mean, 206,000 barrels is a lot of oil. Why doesn't that matter?
It is a lot on paper, but you have to look at where the choke is. We are talking about the Strait of Hormuz here.
Okay.
Reuters notes in their analysis that approximately 20 million barrels per day of crude and refined products move through that exact strait.
Wow.
That is roughly 20% of the entire global supply.
Right.
And that's not even counting the Qatar LNG cargoes, the liquefied natural gas that also has to pass through that same narrow strip of water.
Okay, so let me just get the scale right here. We are celebrating an extra 200,000 barrels from OPEC plus LEC, while 20 million barrels are funneling through one single geographic bottleneck.
Exactly. You're looking at, what, a 1% addition to the flow? Well, the pipe itself is under severe threat. And the mistake people make, the mistake the flow model makes, is thinking that a disruption requires a massive naval blockade.
Right. People imagine warships. They imagine the strait being physically blocked by mines or aircraft carriers.
Right. But Reuters points out a much more subtle but honestly equally devastating mechanism. Insurance.
Insurance.
Yeah. The actuaries are actually more powerful than the admirals here.
Okay, walk me through that. How does an insurance policy freeze a massive shipping lane?
Well, insurers and shipping firms can effectively freeze a route just by withdrawing coverage or refusing transit. Think about it from the perspective of the business. You're a tanker captain, or more accurately, you're the corporate owner of a tanker fleet.
Right.
Your ship is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The cargo inside it is worth tens of millions. If your insurer calls you up and says, we are suspending coverage for the Strait of Hormuz, or we are raising the risk premium by 500%, Do you sail?
You can't. I mean, you'd be betting the entire company on a single trip.
Exactly. The ship stays at anchor. It doesn't matter if the strait is technically physically open. It doesn't matter if the water is calm and there's not a warship in sight. If it is uninsurable, it is effectively closed.
So going back to that OPEC plus number, raising production by 206,000 barrels doesn't mean anything if you can't get the 20 million barrels out of the driveway.
Precisely. The constraint completely changes. It's no longer a supply issue. We have plenty of oil sitting there. It's a delivery issue.
Got it.
And specifically, for you, the listener, trying to figure out where prices are going, the critical variable isn't barrels anymore. It is duration.
Duration. So the question isn't how much oil, it's how long is the delay.
That is the only question that matters. If you are trying to make sense of energy prices in 2026, you need to stop watching the OPEC meetings. Who cares about the quotas? You need to be watching for duration signals.
What does a duration signal actually look like in the real world?
You watch the tanker transits. Are they actually moving through, or are they loitering in the Gulf? You watch the insurance terms. Are underwriters actively writing policies for that zone today? And you watch inventory draws. Because if the duration of a disruption stretches out, say, from a few days to a few weeks, the price of oil stops reflecting supply and demand entirely. It starts reflecting forced rerouting versus time.
And if that duration stretches?
Then you get the massive second-order effects. You get freight inflation because ships have to take the long way around Africa, which adds weeks to the journey and burns way more fuel.
Yeah.
You get food cost increases because energy goes into fertilizer and transport. It's a cascading failure that starts with a single choke point.
It's really interesting because it shifts the geopolitical power dynamic entirely. In the old flow model, the power sat with the producer, the country actually pumping the oil out of the ground.
Right.
But in this model, the power sits with whoever can guarantee the path.
Correct. Reliability becomes the ultimate premium product.
Okay, let's pivot. We're moving from the flow of oil to the flow of intelligence. Or more specifically, the flow of compute. Because if oil is the physical fuel, compute is the industrial fuel of 2026, and we have to talk about Nvidia.
We really do.
Yeah.
The numbers coming out of that company are they're almost hard to comprehend.
I am looking at the New York Times reporting on Nvidia's earnings from February 25th, 2026. I want to read these out slowly because the scale is just massive.
Go for it.
Quarterly profit, $43 billion.
$43 billion in 90 days.
Data center chip sales, $61.7 billion. That is up 71% year over year. Total revenue was $68.1 billion, and their guidance for the next quarter is $78 billion.
It's just incredible velocity. I mean, to put that in perspective for you, that data center revenue alone is bigger than the GDP of many mid-sized nations.
And here's the detail that really caught my eye. The Times notes that the Blackwell chip, their newest architecture, made up about 2/3 of that data center revenue. So this isn't people buying old stock at a discount. Everyone is upgrading immediately to the absolute cutting edge.
Yeah, but here is where we need to connect this back to the choke point thesis. In the old world, a tech company earnings report was a stock story. It was all about consumer demand.
Did people buy more iPhones? Did they click more ads on Google?
Exactly. It was a reflection of consumer sentiment. This is not that. Nvidia's earnings are no longer a reflection of consumer desire. You don't get to $61.7 billion in chip sales because people want to generate funny images or chat with a customer service bot.
So what is it then?
These numbers tell an industrial policy story. That's a bee-sting reframe here.
An industrial policy story. Explain that.
Think about what those chips actually represent. They aren't consumer gadgets.
Yeah.
They are heavy infrastructure. In 2026, AI earnings reflect industrial capacity. We were talking about power, cooling, fabrication plants.
Yeah.
When you see $61.7 billion in data center sales, you are seeing a massive physical build-out of factories for intelligence.
So it's less like selling software and more like building power plants or steel mills in the 1920s.
Exactly. It is heavy industry. And that creates our new choke point. The bottleneck isn't desire. Clearly, the demand is there. It's up 71%. The bottleneck is installation speed.
Installation speed, meaning actually getting the things plugged in.
You cannot just download a data center. These are massive physical projects in the real world. They require pouring thousands of tons of concrete. They require structural steel. They require massive amounts of electricity. We're talking gigawatts of power and immense amounts of water for cooling.
So the constraint is the physical world itself. We are bumping up against literal physics and construction timelines.
We are. Nvidia might have the chips ready to ship, but is the building ready to receive them? Is the local power grid ready to handle that kind of load. And when the constraint is strictly physical, it raises a very difficult question. Who gets priority access?
Right. If there is a limited number of these Blackwell chips, and more importantly, a limited amount of power capacity on the grid to run them, who gets to cut the line?
And that right there is the choke point. We start seeing questions about export controls. We start asking about supply chain security. Because if compute is the fundamental resource for economic growth in the 21st century, then access to that compute is a matter of national importance.
It's a strategic reserve.
Yes. It's not just a commercial transaction between a vendor and a buyer anymore.
So for the listener, what is the signal here? If we're not just supposed to be watching the stock ticker, what are we watching to understand where this is actually going?
You watch the physical build-out. Don't look at the software release notes or the benchmark scores. Look at the data center power capacity additions in local municipalities.
Interesting.
Look at the utility contracts being signed. Look at networking supply constraints like fiber optic cable orders. Look at the lead times for getting these electrical subsystems online.
Because the impact will show up in capital expenditure, the CapEx, and the electricity demand long before we ever see it trickle down to a consumer app.
That's exactly right. The macro impact of AI in 2026 is an industrial construction boom and an energy demand shock. That is the real story hiding inside that New York Times earnings report.
Okay, so we've got the physical fuel stuck in the Strait of Hormuz. We've got the industrial engine, the compute bottlenecked by physical construction and power grids. Now I want to move up the stack and talk about the steering wheel, the control layer.
This is the one that I really think people are sleeping on. It's way less visible than an oil tanker or a massive concrete data center, but it might actually be more powerful in the long run.
Because we've spent the last 2 years obsessively talking about models, right?
Oh, completely.
Everyone wants to know who has the best large language model. Is it the new GPT? Is it Claude? Is it Gemini? But according to TechCrunch, the battleground is shifting.
It is definitely moving up the stack.
I have this piece from TechCrunch, February 5th, 2026. They are reporting on the launch of OpenAI Frontier. Now, this isn't just another chatbot. This is described as an end-to-end platform for enterprises to build and manage AI agents.
Manage being the operative word there.
Right. And it's not just for OpenAI's models. That's what's wild. It's an open platform. It can manage agents built completely outside their ecosystem. And they are already signing deals with absolute heavy hitters. TechCrunch lists ServiceNow, Snowflake, HP, Oracle, State Farm, and Uber.
That list of names tells you everything you need to know. These aren't just trendy tech startups in Silicon Valley. These are the plumbing of the corporate world.
Yeah.
State Farm, Uber. These are legacy companies that run incredibly complex, highly regulated, real-world operations.
And there is a quote here from Gartner via the TechCrunch article that really sums it up. They call agent management platforms the most valuable real estate in AI.
Let's pause on that for a second. Why is it the most valuable real estate? Why isn't the underlying model the most valuable thing anymore?
I assume because the model is essentially becoming a commodity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the bee sting reframe for software. The model, the actual AI brain that does the thinking, is just the engine. You can swap engines. Today, you might use the top-tier OpenAI model. Tomorrow, you might find a cheaper open-source model that works just as well for your specific accounting tasks.
So you just plug it in instead.
Right. But the platform that manages all those agents across your company, that is the steering wheel, the keys, and the corporate insurance policy, all rolled into one.
So this is our corporate choke point.
It is the ultimate control plane. Think about it. If you are a massive enterprise like State Farm, you aren't just going to let thousands of autonomous AI agents run wild on your internal network.
No, that sounds like a security nightmare.
That's a massive liability. You need a system that says this specific agent is allowed to access this secure customer data, but this other agent is not. Or this agent is authorized to issue a refund to a customer up to $500, but it cannot issue $501 without human approval.
Right. You need governance. You need a strict audit trail. You have to know who did what and when and why.
And once you pick a system to handle those permissions and those audits, you are locked in. It is incredibly sticky software. It's no longer about who has the smartest model in the benchmark test. It's about who governs the enterprise workflow.
It really reminds me of the operating system wars back in the 90s. It didn't actually matter who made the best individual word processor or spreadsheet. It mattered who owned Windows. If you controlled the environment, you won the whole game.
Precisely. And this raises a really uncomfortable question, which I think is central to understanding this specific choke point. If these AI agents are effectively becoming our coworkers, I mean, they are digital employees interacting with customers and spending real corporate money. Then the software that grants them permissions and track their behavior, what does that software actually become?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. It's not just IT management software anymore.
No, it becomes HR.
HR for robots.
Basically, yes. Think about what a human resources department does. It decides what you are allowed to do, it records your actions for legal compliance, and it shuts you down or fires you if you violate company policy. That is exactly what OpenAI Frontier is doing for these digital workers.
So OpenAI isn't just selling a developer tool here. They are positioning themselves to be the HR department for the entire global AI workforce.
And whoever controls that layer has incredibly durable power. The model providers, the guys building the actual brains, might fight a brutal price war to the bottom, undercutting each other on token costs just to get usage.
Right, a race to zero.
But the compliance layer, the control plane, that is where the profit margins will be violently protected because you don't switch out your entire HR department overnight. It is way too integrated into how your company physically functions.
So what is the watch item here? If you're listening to this and trying to figure out who wins in enterprise software over the next 5 years, what are you looking for?
You watch the procurement and compliance teams inside these big Fortune 500 companies. Don't watch what the developers are playing with on the weekends. Watch the people who actually sign the massive enterprise checks and manage the legal risk.
Yeah.
They're going to be looking for vendors who sell agent permissioning, ironclad audit logs, and security guarantees. That is the boring, unsexy back office stuff that is going to determine the absolute winners in this space.
It's really fascinating. We started this deep dive talking about physical oil tankers navigating the Middle East, and we ended up talking about digital HR departments, but the underlying theme is identical.
It is. It's entirely about bottlenecks. It's about control.
So let's recap this to bring it all together for you. We are looking at a world in 2026 defined by 3 major choke points.
First, you have the physical choke point.
Yeah.
The Strait of Hormuz. We've learned that standard production quotas like that 206,000 barrel OPEC plus number from Reuters,
Yeah.
they don't really matter when the route itself is frozen by insurance risk. The real variable to watch isn't barrels, it's duration.
Second, the industrial choke point. Nvidia and the massive compute build-out. We've learned from those New York Times numbers that AI is now a heavy industrial policy story. The constraint is physical installation speed. We're talking power grids, concrete, and cooling, not just consumer demand for apps.
And third, the corporate choke point, the control plane. We see with OpenAI Frontier in TechCrunch that the real value is shifting away from the AI model itself up to the management layer, the HR for agents that controls permissions and workflows.
It really changes how you read the morning news, doesn't it? You stop looking for the flows of goods and services, and you start looking for the gates. You start looking for who actually holds the keys to the bottleneck.
That is the new reality. Markets are no longer just about who has the best product or the lowest price. They are entirely about who has the permission and the physical capacity to pass through the choke point.
You know, it leaves me with one final thought on all this. If we are genuinely entering an era where everything is bottlenecked by physical space or strict compliance gates, it makes you wonder about the value of legacy inefficient systems. Like things that are already built and already approved, even if they are slower, the fact that they completely bypass the modern choke point might make them incredibly valuable again.
That's a great point. Just having an existing clear path becomes a massive premium.
Exactly. And that actually leads us to a massive question for our next deep dive. If we are living in a world of structural constraints, where you simply cannot just make more of something instantly to meet demand, who actually has the power to raise prices?
That is the billion-dollar question right there. If supply is structurally stuck, price is the only lever the market has left to pull.
Next time on the deep dive, pricing power. Who can raise prices without losing demand in a bottlenecked world? You definitely won't want to miss that one. Thanks for listening.